الله وبركاته. Marshall, I'm just starting with that. Would you like to say?
Okay, Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وليس الأجر وصف الثمن لأنه حق المشتري ولو كان وصفا له لتبعه فيكون حقا للبائع كالثمن وصار كما إذا اشترى شيئا بثمن مؤجل ثم ولاه غيره لا يثبت الأجر إلا بالذكر كذا كذا هذا.
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم نور قلوبنا بمعرفتك واشرح صدورنا بنور كتابك وسنة نبيك واحفظنا عن زلل وخطأ في بيان مرادك. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. So we continue the masala from yesterday. Where if the Shafi was to buy, or rather the person was to buy a house on credit, and he had a few months to pay it off, then this credit will not be passed on to the Shafi. In other words, you won't have that choice of paying it on credit as well, on terms as well. He either has to pay immediately cash, or he has to wait until the end of the credit term. And then at that time, once it expires, you can pay cash and take the house. Imam Zufar Ahmad is of the opinion that he can do so, meaning that he can take the house immediately and pay it off on terms, just as the house of Mushtari was allowed. Right? And he said the reason for that is because paying on credit, this is a wasf, an attribute of the amount to be paid. It's not thamanul naqd, but it's thamanul mu'ajjal. Thamanul mu'ajjal. It's a credit deal, so therefore the amount that has to be paid, one of its qualities is that it is on credit. Just like how Ziyafa, he gave the example of Ziyafa, if something was alloyed, a mixed metal, not pure 100% gold or silver coin, then in the same way, the Shafi would be also entitled to pay with Zuyuf and doesn't have to pay with pure gold, silver, dinar or dirham. So we responded by saying that first of all, that a shart, the credit aspect is a shart in a transaction. It doesn't happen automatically. Others, for a person to be enabled to pay on credit, there has to be a stipulation, an agreement from both sides, from both parties, the buyer and the seller, that he will accept credit and that he will pay on credit, respectively. That's number one. So second, and obviously the shart is not something which passes on automatically to in a third party. And secondly, the reason for this is that you won't be happy to extend credit to just anybody. Somebody that you trust, somebody you know will pay your money, it's got a good credit rating and so forth in today's times. That person you will trust to pay on credit. So this might not be the case in the case of the Shafi. This might not be the case in the person of the Shafi, because he might not be someone that we know, or whether he's credit worthy and so forth. Therefore, you cannot impose this upon the seller just because he was happy with the mushtari to pay on credit. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to consent to allowing the Shafi also to pay on credit. And then we disagree with what you're saying, Imam Zufar rahimahullah ta'ala, that the ajal, the credit, is a wasf of the thaman, an attribute of the thaman, a quality of the thaman. We disagree with that. Why? Because this is the right of the mushtari. This is the right of the buyer. Once the condition has been put into place that they are allowed to pay on credit, it now becomes his haq. Meaning what? That if he now for some reason wants to pay immediately upfront, he can do so. Otherwise, he can pay on the terms as agreed. So that was saying, وَلَوْ كَانَ وَصْفًا لَهُ لَتَبِعَهُ, had it been, that had this not been the case, had it been a credit of the money, had it been a quality of the money, had credit been a quality of the money, an attribute of the money, لَتَبِعَهُ, then he would have followed the money. He would have followed the money wherever the money went, because obviously, as we know, you cannot separate a sifa from its mawsuf. Whereas in this instance, that's not the case. It's not following the money. فَيَكُونُ حَقًّا لِلْبَاعِ كَالثَّمَنِ. So therefore, the credit will be the right of the buyer now. Just like how the money itself is the right of the buyer. وَصَارَ كَمَا إِذَا اشْتَرَى شَيْئًا بِثَمَنٍ مُؤَجَّلٍ ثُمَّ وَلَّى غَيْرَهُ. So the example of the qiyas of this would be like if somebody bought something on credit. And so let's say for example, I bought a watch on credit. Let's say the watch costs 500 rand. Alright? ثُمَّ وَلَّاهُ غَيْرَهُ. Then you sold it as tawliya to somebody else. Tawliya, you would have done in Kitab al-Buyū. There's different types of transactions depending on what the selling price is. So tawliya is where you sell at cost. Whatever it costs you, you sell it at that price. And you tell the person when you were selling it to him, I'm selling it to you at the same amount, for the same amount that I purchased it for. I'm selling it to you for 500 rand, which is the amount that I purchased for you. This is called bayu tawliya. So to sell it at cost price, meaning whatever it landed you, that's the amount you're selling it for. Understand? لا يثبت الأجل إلا بذكر. In which case, the credit that he had been extended, the buyer, and he doesn't have to extend that credit to the person he is selling that watch to now. It won't follow the money unless they mention it, and unless he stipulates that in his resale of the watch to the person that he is selling it to. You follow? Understand? So from there we understand that the ajal, the credit is not a sifat of the money necessarily. So similar will be the masala in this case, in this instance. Now I think ثم إن أخذ بثمن حال من الباع سقط الثمن على المشتري. Thereafter, like now we finish that masala. I think thereafter, if the Shafi was to take the option A, right? So he had two options, remember? He could take it immediately and pay cash, or wait for the credit term to finish and then pay at that time. So if he was to opt for the first option, option A, and he takes it for cash, spot cash from the seller, then the amount will fall off on the mushtari. Otherwise, the mushtari will now no longer be responsible for paying that amount of money, because in this case the Shafi is taking it directly from the seller. So obviously the mushtari gets cut out, so therefore he doesn't have to pay anything any longer. For the same reason that we explained earlier, just before that. وَإِنْ أَخَذَ مِنَ الْمُشْتَرِي. However, if he was to take it from the mushtari, meaning after the credit term expired, in which case obviously now it's in the position of the mushtari. رَجَعَ الْبَائِعُ عَلَى الْمُشْتَرِي بِثَمَنٍ مُؤَجَّلٍ. In that instance, the seller can now ask for it to be reimbursed from the mushtari for cash. Follow? Because now the mushtari hasn't paid him yet. He hasn't paid him yet, but he's got the money now because he's taken the money from the Shafi. So in which case the seller is still left without his fee for the house. It's gone to the Shafi, and the money was paid to the mushtari. So the seller is still without, the original owner, meaning he's still without his money. So therefore he can go to the mushtari and tell him, pay up now. You got the money from that guy. You need to reimburse me for it. You have to give the money back to me. You have to give the money to me because the money is actually owing to him. Okay? كما كان لأن الشرط الذي جرى بينهما لم يبدو بأخذ الشفيع. Why? Because the condition which had been stipulated between the two, the buyer and the seller, لم يبدو, it does not become invalidated by the shafi taking the property. فبقي موجبه, so therefore the demand of it then will remain. What is the demand of it? That he reimburses the original owner. فصار كما إذا باعه بثمن حال. So then it will be as if he bought it for cash. Then it will be as if then he purchased it for cash. وقد اشتراه مؤجلا, even though even though he purchased it on credit. It will be as if he bought it cash, even though he purchased it on credit. وإن اختار الانتظار له, however, if he chooses to wait for the house, وإن اختار الانتظار له ذلك, if he chooses to wait, then he has a right to do so. لأن له أي ألا يلتزم زيادة الضرر من حيث النقدية. Why? Because it is right that he doesn't impose upon himself any kind of harm, any kind of inconvenience. Yeah, harm only like inconvenience in terms of paying cash. So he can use that period to sort out his funds. Maybe he didn't have the money upfront immediately, even though he wanted to claim shufa. So now at least he got a grace period to try and get his money together. Understand? So in this way, he can do that. He has a right to do that, so that he can avoid the inconvenience of paying upfront. Understood? وقوله في الكتاب, يعني من قدور رحمة الله statement in قدوري في الكتاب من قدوري. وإن شاء صبر حتى, now he's just clarifying something here. What do we mean that he must be if he wishes to be patient? So he's saying حتى ينقضي الأجل مراده الصبر عن الأخذ. That Imam Quduri's rahmatullahi statement that if he wants to, the Shafi, if he wants to, he can be patient until the credit term expires. The intent, the meaning of that is sabru an al-akh, meaning that he can have patience from taking the house. He can wait to take the house. أما الطلب عليه في الحال, however the talab still remains. The talab al-muwathaba and talab al-shuf'a, that still remains, that he must still do immediately, as was discussed previously. That doesn't mean that he's going to wait for the credit term to finish. He'll only claim shufa. They know that talab must still happen. Then that claim must still happen. Talab al-muwathaba and talab al-shufa must happen. Talab al-ishal, sorry, must happen immediately. Otherwise, his haqqu shufa will be waived, as was discussed. حتى لو سكت عنه بطل شفعته, to the extent that if he was to keep quiet, he didn't make talab, mu'athara and ishad, then his shuf'a will become invalid. In the Abu Hanifa or Muhammad rahmatullahi, according to Tarfain rahimahullah ta'ala, خلافا لقول أبي يوسف, contrary to Imam Yusuf al-Akhar, contrary to Imam Abu Yusuf's final verdict. Okay?
Yes.
Why? This is Tarfain's dalil. لأن حق الشفعة إنما يثبت بالبيع. And because the right of shufa becomes established with the sale, as we discussed many times. As soon as the house goes on sale, حق الشفا immediately comes into effect. والأخذ يتراخى عن الطلب. And it is possible, in brackets, it is possible for the taking of the house to be delayed from its talab, to be delayed from the claim of the house. There's nothing wrong with delaying possession of the house from the claim to the house. Understand? So the claim is one thing that can happen immediately, even though he's only going to be able to take possession months later or whatever the case is, depending on the credit deal. You follow?
Okay.
So there's no reason to delay the talab as well, because these two things are not dependent upon each other. وهو متمكن من الأخذ في الحال, and he, meaning the Shafi, is able to take the house immediately if he wants to. Then he is able to do so. How? بأن يؤدي الثمن حالا, by him paying the cash immediately, as we discussed. فيشترط الطلب عند العلم بالبيع. So therefore, we have stipulated that he must claim the house, طلب الشفعة and إشهاد, as soon as he comes to know of the sale transaction, as soon as he comes to know of the sale. There's no reason for him to delay it. Okay? All clear? Any questions? Anything didn't understand?
Alhamdulillah, understood.
Okay.
قال وإن اشترى ذمي دارا بخمر أو خنزير وشفيعها ذمي أخذها بمثل الخمر وقيمة الخنزير لأن هذا البيع مقضي بالصحة فيما بينهم وحق الشفعة يعم المسلمة والذمية والخمر لهم.
So we discussed the first masala was with regards to a discount in the price or an increase in the price. Then we discussed what, in lieu of what the item is being sold. Is it being sold for an out, is it for sold for something which is in kind, meaning like bartered or traded, or is it being sold for something which has mass, it is weighed or measured, or something which can be something which sold in lieu of something which can be measured, right? Like a property and so forth, or something which can be sold by number, and so on and so forth. Now we're discussing what if the person purchasing the property is not a Muslim, and he is purchasing it for something which is not allowed for us as Muslims to purchase. Then what? So he's saying, وَإِذِ اشْتَرَى ذِمِّيٌّ بِخَمْرٍ, that if the dhimmi is purchasing the house, obviously from another non-Muslim, in lieu of khamr, in lieu of wine or swine, in lieu of wine or swine, in lieu of wine or pork. وَشَفِيعُهَا ذِمِّيٌّ, and the shafi is also a dhimmi. A non-Muslim, a dhimmi is a non-Muslim resident in a Muslim country, and he's living under Muslim rule. Happily, that's called a dhimmi. And the shafi is also a dhimmi. أخذها بمثل الخمر. In this case here, you will take the house for the like of the wine, meaning that you will see what type of wine it is, what's the value and so forth. Sorry, what type of wine it is and everything, and you'll go buy the exact thing, whatever amount of cases and so forth, and give it to the seller. وَقِيمَةُ الْخِنْزِيرِ. However, when it comes to the swine, because swine is like a mithli thing, and the is not the watul qiyam, so therefore you will pay the value of it. Why? لأن هذا البيع مقضي بالصحة فيما بينه. Why? Because this transaction is considered to be correct amongst non-Muslims. They are allowed to trade and deal with these things which are haram for us. وحق الشفعة يؤم المسلم والذمي, and the right of shufra encompasses both a Muslim and a dhimmi. والخمر لهم كالخل لنا, and alcohol for them is like vinegar to us. وَالْخِنْزِيرُ كَالشَّاةِ, and the swine is like sheep. So just like how a sheep is a dawatul qiyam, the same thing will apply to the khinzir. That explained this to you before, because not all animals are exactly the same. فَيَأْخُذُهُ فِي الْأَوَّلِ بِالْمِثْلِ وَالثَّانِ بِالْقِيمَةِ. So therefore, you will take the first, meaning the wine, in lieu of its like, and you'll take the second, meaning the swine, in equal to the value of it. Got that?
Yeah.
وَإِنْ كَانَ شَفِيعًا مُسْلِمًا أَخَذَ بِقِيمَةِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْخِنْزِيرِ. And if the shafi is a Muslim, meaning the neighbor or whatever the partner is a Muslim, the Muslim will take this in both cases for the value of the alcohol or the pork. أما الخنزير, as regards the swine, فظاهر. So the reason is obvious, because we just discussed this now. It's dawatul qiyam. وكذا الخمر, and the same thing will apply to the alcohol. امتناع التسليم والتسلم. Why? Because it's not permissible to hand over needed to take possession of this wine في حق المسلم. It's in the right of a Muslim from the aspect of being a Muslim. فالتحق بغير مثله. So therefore, as far as Muslims is concerned, the wine will be joined to something which is غير مثلي. It will become ذوات القيم for a Muslim, because he's not allowed to deal with wine in any instance. وإن كان الشفيع مسلم وذميا أخذ المسلم نصفها. And if the Shafi is both a Muslim and a Dhimmi, then if the Shafi is both Muslim and Dhimmi 50-50, أخذ المسلم نصفها بنصف قيمة الخمر. The Muslim will take his half, then for half of the value of the wine. And the Dhimmi نصفها بنصف مثل الخمر. And the Dhimmi will take half of it, his half, for the value of the he will take his half in lieu of the like of that wine. اعتبار البعض بالكل, taking into consideration a portion with the whole, taking into consideration percentage with the whole. So because there's two Shafis, then they will have to split it 50-50. So as far as the Muslim is concerned, he can't obviously give the like of it. So you pay the value, and the Dhimmi can do so. So you will pay the like. Okay, just like how we did it. If you just like how we discussed it, if the Shafi was a Dhimmi only, and if the Shafi was a Muslim only. So taking into consideration the percentage on the whole. Understood?
Yeah.
Or you can say the party making qiyas of the part and the whole. فلو أسلم الذمي أخذها بنصف قيمة الخمر لعجزه أن تمليك الخمر. And if the dhimmi was to become a Muslim, then in this case he too will have to take it for half of the value of the wine. He can't give wine now. وَلِعَجْزِهِ عَنِ التَّمْلِيكِ الْخَمْرِ, because now he has become helpless, incapable of taking ownership of wine, making somebody the owner of wine. He can't do that any longer. بالإسلام, because of his وبالإسلام تأكد حقه. So the other question is, but won't his right fall away by becoming Muslim? So we say no. Then by him becoming Muslim, his haqq has become even more emphasized, even more strengthened. So لا أي يبتل فصار كما إذا اشتراها. You got لا أي يبتل?
لا أي يبطل.
لا أي يبتل. So now that it will become invalid. فصار كما إذا اشتراها بكر من رطب فحضر الشفيع بعد انقطاعه فيأخذها بقيمة الرتب كذا هذا. So it will be as if he sold, or he purchased it, sorry, with 1 kur of rutab, of fresh dates. Understand? And then the Shafi presented himself after that particular date is no longer found in Kita'i. After that particular date is no longer found in the market. So in which case, there the masla would be what? He now has to pay the value of that dates, because you can't get the dates itself. So they have to pay the value of the dates. So kada hada. The same thing will apply here. Initially he was able to give it, but now you can't give it anymore by becoming Muslim. When you can't give it anymore, you give the value of it. Understood? Anything you didn't understand?
No, alhamdulillah, understood, man.
Okay, so that completes that particular chapter. Now we go on to another chapter related to Shufa, inshallah, with regards to construction and additions and so on and so forth. Inshallah, night of Jummah as well. Lot of salawat, Surah Al-Kahf, dua for yourself, for your parents.